Benefactor underwriting for this broadcast has been provided by a grant from Republic Bank. The power of red is back. Major underwriting support for this broadcast has been provided by grants from New York Community Bank, M&T Bank, Perfect Building Maintenance, Customers Bank, Collins Building Services, Marks Paneth. Additional underwriting support has been provided by grants from AmTrust Title, Bank of America, Capital One Bank, Douglaston Development Levine Builders, Flushing Bank, Friedman LLP, Handro Properties LLC, Handler Real Estate Organization, Investors Bank, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, John Catsimatidis Red Apple Group, New Banks, Meridian Capital Group, Ocean First Bank, RPW Group, TD Bank, the One Stop Property Group, and these friends. Okay, here we are. It's 2022, and people are still questioning where we stand with another COVID experience. But people are saying, where do we want to live? Do we want to live in New York City? Do we want to live in Westchester? Do we want to live in New Jersey? So today I have assembled a group of individuals who really understand New Jersey, Westchester, New York, and Connecticut, and Pennsylvania, because Russell's involved with Pennsylvania, to talk about residential development in the region, specifically in New Jersey. My guests include George Vallone, who is the co-founder and the president of the Hoboken Brownstone Company, Russell Tepper, who is the senior managing director at Mill Creek Residential. And last but not least, the younger partner, formerly of Hudson Hoboken, the co-founder of Hudson Brownstone Company, Danny Gans, who's also the managing member at Hudson Development Co. So, George, it's 21 seasons, the Stoller Report, and probably in the first season on radio, I had this individual by the name of George Vallone, who arrived late to the attendance over there, and it was verbose and had some comments about the market. So today, how do you see the market? I mean, when you went there and you went to Hudson Tea Company, they were Maxwell on the Hudson. Nobody knew about Jersey City and Hoboken. They were also waiting for the new Frank Sinatra statue to be built in Hoboken. Where do we see the market today in Hoboken and in Jersey?
Since Danny and I started the company 41 years ago, there's been a tremendous change all along the Gold Coast. The deindustrialization of the Northeast abandoned a lot of properties that were previously used for industrial purposes and warehousing and logistics, and railroads were ripped up in many instances along the Gold Coast, and it really set the table for the housing boom that we've seen there over the last 40 years. It's continued to build out the waterfront areas, which is north of Hoboken, and then downtown Jersey City is tremendously built out at this point. There's probably little developable sites left that aren't either already built out or already owned by developers. So I think that the portions of the Gold Coast that run along the side of the river are getting close to capacity at this point. Now the development is moving up to the top of the cliffs. We all know Journal Square, which is up in the heights of Jersey City, is building out at a rapid rate now. We see high rises going along up top of the cliffs all the way up north. And the demand seems to be there. Every time we put up another building, we get up into the high 90 occupancy rates. We were able to maintain occupancy through most of the COVID. Interestingly, since our latest project was three podium buildings, low rise, meaning basically 5- and 6-story buildings, we had a lot of the leasing activity driven by the fact that people could walk upstairs and didn't have to take an elevator all the way up into these big high rises. Part of the social distancing draw of the building. So I would say that demand is still strong. There's still a huge shortage on the supply side at all levels of housing right now, for sale, single fam, condo, high-rise, mid-rise. There's a tremendous shortage, basically due to the fact that it's so difficult to get approvals these days. New Jersey is not different from many other states. It seems like both coasts are really slamming on the brakes in terms of entitling new projects, which is going to further constrain the supply. And as we all know, when demand increases and supply remains static or decreases, pricing has to go up. It's economics 101.
Russell, you have a vast region that you take care of. How do you compare the Jersey market compared to the Westchester? I mean, you just opened up another project in New Rochelle. How do you see the market over there and the difference?
Well, there are a lot of similarities to the markets in picking up what George just mentioned about the challenges of entitlements. There's a high level of unpredictability in obtaining approvals for new development throughout the New York, New Jersey region. We have had some good success developing Westchester County over the past few years. And despite the historical nature of Westchester not being a pro-growth place for multifamily development, over the past few years, that has changed. We've developed in Yonkers, we've developed in New Rochelle, as you had mentioned. And those communities are starting to really understand the importance of growth and live-work environments. And unlike the Gold Coast of New Jersey, the tax structure in New York is quite a bit different. So in many of the areas of the Gold Coast, pilots are no longer necessary. Whereas in Westchester County, in most of the communities, pilots are necessary in order to allow for development, given the higher tax, property taxes that exist in those markets.
How have you adapted the construction today of your properties in light of COVID? Okay, in light of co-working space, possibly, co-living space, or the way people are living today or planning to live. Have you adjusted the type of plans that you would do in your construction? Dan?
It's been moving towards a lot of the things that COVID has highlighted. Private working space in buildings, the 3 buildings that George just mentioned, all built with working space. People can get their own cubicles within the building. So the trend was going that way. Certainly projects being drawn on the tables right now are thinking more and more of people working from home, and in buildings that have large numbers of smaller units, that's an important thing to have space like that available for people in the building.
What about affordability? Okay, George, I know you've been heavily in the New Jersey developments over there. How are we taking care of building affordable housing within each of these developments?
In a national perspective, we're not doing very well at all on affordable housing. I'm a member of the Counselors of Real Estate, and we do our top 10 issues every year, and consistently affordable housing is in the top 10 issues. In fact, it's in the top 5, and this year it was number 3. And I was asked to do the article on that. So I did a little bit of research on the subject, and there's a tremendous deficit. 3 years ago when I did the first article, there was a deficit of 7 million homes that would be priced at the affordability levels. And the last year I did it, it had dropped to 6.8 million. And I'm not sure if that's because of an increase of supply or if that's a decrease in demand for affordable housing. It's probably both. But we need to have a lot more support for affordable housing. The federal tax credits, the 9% and 4% tax credits, are really the only source of building affordable housing in volume. And there's a limited supply of those, and they're very competitive. So nationally, we've got a huge gap between supply and demand of affordable housing. In New Jersey, we had a battle that goes all the way back to the early 1970s when the Mount Laurel decision kicked off the whole affordable housing debate in a major way. And it is now the law in New Jersey that every municipality has to provide a realistic opportunity to provide affordable housing. It's generally in the range of 15 to 20% of your housing needs to be set aside at the affordability guidelines. So it's getting built, but it's slow. And at dumping the whole burden on developers without an offsetting compensating bonus or some type of offsetting cost offset is going to keep it at a slow pace. Everybody tends to think that developers can answer all questions and solve all problems. It's not the case. It's a public-private partnership. Affordable housing is a public responsibility. And to foist it all onto the private sector developers just means it's going to happen at a slow rate. I was hopeful that the big Build Back Better program that President Biden was trying to get passed would get passed, because in it was a huge amount of increased subsidies for affordable housing, as well as infrastructure, which is the corollary of building affordable housing. You can't build affordable housing where there's no way for people to get to their jobs. The cost of living is not just housing, it's also commuting to work. So that bill seems stalled. I think we're going to be mired in this slow growth of affordable housing units in New Jersey and across the country. It's going to be a slow slog, and there's going to be a huge gap, and that gap is showing up in the homeless issue. If you look at some of these major cities, Los Angeles and others, the amount of homeless people living under bridges and in tents and in parks is just a symptom of the problem that we have an enormous undersupply of affordable housing in this country.
In a number of the communities that we've developed, we obtain the rights to develop those properties as a result of intervening in litigation between the municipality and the council or the state, who is trying to avoid the development of affordable housing. And so we intervene in order to allow for multifamily to be developed in a particular community. And in exchange for us succeeding in that regard, we develop a market rate community that has within it affordable workforce housing in a portion of the community. That achieves a few goals, one of which is helping the municipality meet its required obligation to develop affordable housing within their municipality. Secondly, it allows for some of the unmet demand for multifamily housing to be brought into a market. And third, it allows for those that can only afford to live in affordable housing to live in a community where they do not feel as though they're discriminated against. They live in a community that is no different for them than it is for anyone who is not in an affordable apartment. So we've done that in a number of communities. It's been very successful. It's a win-win for all of those that are involved, all the stakeholders. And then just to pick up on something that Danny had mentioned a few minutes ago, the apartments we develop in our communities are getting a little bit larger as a result of COVID, because people are more so working from home, which is really important. People now want to work from home more. Pre-pandemic, there were people that wanted to not work in their home, that were looking for amenities within buildings where they can work in offices within our buildings or work in conference rooms and whatnot. While we're still providing that kind of amenity, we're also building apartments that are a little bit larger so that they can work from their apartment and not be in their kitchen or not be in their public space to conduct their work.
We hear about Jersey City, we hear about Hoboken, we hear about Morristown, you're in Woodbridge and other places. What about Newark? Okay, it's the largest city in the state. Okay, lots of things are there. You have land, you have availability. What's happening there, Dan?
Newark is starting to change, though Newark has underlying problems that will still continue to take time to really attract the type of people that are in Jersey City and Hoboken right now. And there has been a great growth in that city and change, but it's still going to take quite some time. I just wanted to jump on the affordable housing issue one more time. In Jersey City and Hoboken, as George mentioned, there's this 15% rule, and Jersey City and Hoboken have the amount of units that are required. And it had been for a long time that cities could take from other places and use those funds to help the cities. That has stopped in the state of New Jersey. Jersey City's trying to promote is when developers go back and ask for more than what's allowed within the zoning regulation, that affordable units become attached to that. The difficulty is, as George mentioned, everybody thinks the developers have much more in it than they do. And so it pushes people to just build the as of right. The affordable units don't get built, and the size of the projects don't get built. So again, the housing crunch continues to be forced. And the best thing to relieve housing, as in any market, is create housing. And with the difficulties to create housing in
People remember that people wanted to have the capability of home ownership. What's happening, interest rates are still relatively low, okay? What's happening with the home ownership? Are you seeing that, Russell, Dan, and George? Russell?
Well, the price of home ownership continues to increase at a pretty fast pace throughout the country. And that has continued to prop up multifamily as a different form of living experience. We have expanded our portfolio to now include single family detached rental communities for those that would like the experience of living in a detached home, but can't necessarily afford the mortgage, the down payments, the mortgage, and the all other financing requirements of owning a home. The challenges here are, again, supply and demand. The supply of new, whether it be single family or multifamily residential throughout the country, cannot grow fast enough to meet demand. And the entitlement processes across primarily the West and East Coast are very challenging. So that is going to drive up pricing for home ownership as well as the rental market.
I also want to add to that about multifamily. And for years, George and I made our living building condominiums, and condominiums were something that lenders and partners, investors were very interested in being part of. That market, the condominiums, the banks don't want to get involved in condominium projects. So large multifamily projects, other than in Manhattan, because in Manhattan it seems anything can go, but the desire to do that type of housing is the financial institutions are not interested in going down that road.
George?
Yeah, I would certainly agree with that. The entry fee to get into a for sale home, in any type of for sale home, whether it's in a multi-fam condominium building or whether it's a single fam or townhouse, the cost of entry has gone up a lot since when Danny and I were building condos. There were mortgage programs out there that would finance 95% of the home price. Put 5% down and you own a home. Ever since the mortgage meltdown and the resulting legislation, often referred to as FIREA, now you're looking at 20% down payments. And that is just going to price out most of the younger folks that are the first-time home buyers. They're getting priced out, even at these low mortgage rates. What the low mortgage rates are doing is the middle income buyer and the upper income buyer who don't have or not constrained by mortgage, they're bidding up the prices of homes right now. So there's a huge bidding wars going on for sale pricing at the middle, upper middle, and upper income levels, which is just reflective of the earlier point we made about the lack of supply of housing. If you're going to do affordable housing, then you should do affordable housing by mass transit. And Jersey City and Hoboken, as Danny mentioned, always had a huge supply of affordable housing, more than the required percentage of all other municipalities, because they were so transit rich. People moved there, the housing was affordable, they could get to work on a train or a bus or a subway. And that's what drove the market initially. The two great cohorts right now of housing needs are the baby boomers, which are about 68 million of us, and the millennials, where it's about 72 million. So 150 million people in this country, which is almost half the population of our country, are in need of housing and can't get it at the price they need it at. So it just goes right back full circle to the original issue of the difficulty with getting approvals, the NIMBYism that you see, not only in the suburban and rural areas, but you're starting to see it in the urban markets now. People are saying, not in my backyard, not another housing, a project going up. The old excuse used to be, Well, it's going to have an impact on our schools. You're going to bring a lot of school-age children in. Our schools are already at capacity. We're going to have to build new schools. That means we're going to have to raise everybody's taxes. And the last thing politicians want to do is raise taxes, because that's usually when they get voted out. So there's this tension that always existed because housing was seen as producing children. And from a fiscal standpoint, children are no good. That situation has changed. We are in a trough right now in public school enrollment. Almost uniformly across the country, public school enrollment is down from the time when our generation had lots of kids and lots of new schools had to get built, to the point now where they're all graduated, we're all empty nesters. Now the next generation coming along, large generation, the millennials, they're forming households much later in life. They're having less children and they're having them later in life. So there's still a tremendous amount of capacity in the school system, although most municipalities don't want to admit it, don't want to see what the reality is. So now the excuses become traffic, parking, quality of life. Somehow they equate quality of life with more people moving into their town. It's actually the opposite of that. More people moving into town means more vitality on Main Street for the businesses, more restaurants. There's this false perception in the market right now that the impact of more housing has. It's really, in my mind, it's the opposite. Most municipalities are going to be better off fiscally. It's going to be better off to keep their schools full. They don't want to lay off teachers. And it's more, there's more services that can be provided as the rateable base increases. So,
You know, we talk about baby boomers. What about senior housing? Okay, independent living, senior housing, assisted living. Are we seeing that in New Jersey, the magnitude that it was a couple of years ago?
The assisted living, continuing care, senior living platform of residential is not something that Mill Creek Residential develops. We are developing age-targeted communities, which allow for those that children that are grown and out of the house, but don't want to necessarily leave the community, but want to sell their home, can live in a highly amenitized community that is targeted towards a sophisticated, older population. The assisted living and whatnot that you're speaking of, Michael, creates a level of service and experience that is different than a Mill Creek community. And there are others that I'm sure you've interacted with in the past that are professionals in that business. And
Right.
they probably would say to you that it is also difficult to see those communities get approved. Usually those communities are fairly large in nature. They require a significant amount of land. Don't generate any traffic because most of the population doesn't drive, but the level of service and the level of accommodation is much different than what we're speaking of today.
Question, repositioning, land, it's a limited amount of land. What are you doing to reposition older properties? Like George, you're trying to do something in Flemington. Let's talk about taking shopping centers or taking portions of locations and repositioning them. I mean, people are talking about in New York City to take the C and D buildings and make them residential. Unfortunately, they aren't giving tax advantages to do that.
yeah, well, the retail market, the sticks and bricks part of the retail market, particularly in the big box area and these large enclosed malls, have taken a huge hit. I think Danny mentioned this earlier, COVID really accelerated many of the trends that were already underway. Working from home, shopping online, those types of things they were already happening in the early teens, the 20 teens, but COVID certainly accelerated every one of those things. So what we're seeing now in retail is we're seeing a real exodus from malls. I believe that a lot of the malls are going to be able to reinvigorate themselves. I think it's going to be a combination of online shopping and sticks and bricks shopping, because there's a lot of studies out there that says that people still want to go to a store. They want to feel the product, see the product, touch it, see what's new out there that they might not be aware of. If you're not aware of a new product, you can't even buy it online because you don't even know it exists. So there's going to be an experiential part of retailing that I think is going to remain. I think it's going to be smaller boxes. And I think the successful retailers are going to make a combination of online shopping for the convenience part and still have a sticks and bricks location for the experiential part.
We're actually doing that. We're actually doing this right now. We have two mall properties that we're redeveloping with the mall owners. And we also have under construction right now in Woodbridge, New Jersey, a development that was a retail strip center that is being redeveloped for multifamily. And we have other properties that, the office market is also feeling similar impacts.
Yep.
We have multiple properties that we have under construction right now that were the former home of office buildings that lay dormant for some time.
Question, what about downtown communities? I know you like Morristown, Montclair. I mean, it seems to me that communities that have, local retailers, people enjoy that.
Absolutely. We're developing in Berkeley Heights right now as a perfect example of that, Michael. Has a walkable downtown. The community I just mentioned in Woodbridge, the community you had mentioned in New Rochelle, all of those are in downtowns that are walkable, but also have access to mass transportation for those that work outside that local community. It's critically important to be able to build up areas where there is transportation, where there is cultural opportunities, and people to be able to have an experience outside their home.
My Crystal Apple seems a little bright, okay, a little shiny, and definitely things look good in the residential market. The whole question is how we take care of COVID, how we take care of affordability, and how we just grow the community. And I'd like to thank George, who hasn't been here in many years, Russell, who was with me a couple of months ago, and Danny, and I'll see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you.